Ah, Jon Snow. What is there to say about Jon Snow? The guy can be a real badass sometimes. His arc is compelling because he's kind of the underdog, the bastard son with nothing to inherit, joins the Night's Watch to make a name for himself, and because he thought of it as an option that would not undermine his sense of honor. There is a lot of love for this character. He's very relatable. Since the character is so beloved, it's easy for people to fall into the trap of ignoring all the glaring character flaws that have come to light over the past few seasons, and giving the character a pass where they would criticize others. I'm not going to fall into that trap. Jon Snow makes a lot of wrong decisions, many of them due to inexperience, but he also makes a lot of hard choices. His decision to bring the wildlings through the wall was noble, and ultimately I believe the right decision, even though it upset many of the other brothers of the Night's Watch. The wildling army was necessary to fight the wars to come. Jon Snow, unlike most of the others, had seen the army of the dead, and he knew what was important. Jon Snow has demonstrated throughout most of the show that he does in fact possess many of the characteristics that make a good leader. That is, until the later seasons. I don't know what happened. Oh wait, he did die. It's canon that when a person is resurrected from death, usually something is left behind. In Season 6, when Jon Snow comes back from the dead, he claims to have experienced the same nothingness after death that Beric Dondarrion told Melisandre that he saw in Season 3. That being said, it is most likely true that Jon Snow, like Beric, lost a part of himself during his resurrection. Jon Snow's decision to leave the Night's Watch was a good one in my opinion. He had fulfilled his vows, and why would he continue in a place where people wanted him dead? It's pretty much everything that Jon Snow does after he leaves Castle Black that I have a problem with. After Jon Snow is brought back from the dead by Melisandre, which literally everyone predicted would happen, he handles his final business and then leaves the Night's Watch. Wait, he does stay at Castle Black a bit longer because Sansa randomly shows up after escaping Ramsay. Sansa is all like, we need to go take back Winterfell, and Jon Snow's like, no, f*** it all. You could say Jon Snow is depressed, he just died, he gets a pass for this. But I don't buy that even resurrected Jon Snow wouldn't care about taking back Winterfell. Beric Dondarrion is resurrected many times while he is a part of the Brotherhood. He is different slightly every time he returns, but one death doesn't totally alter who he is as a person. I think Jon Snow would need to die more than once before he becomes unmotivated about taking back his ancestral home. Somehow Sansa knows that Ramsay killed Roose, even though she left Winterfell before that happened, but whatever. Eventually, Jon Snow decides to help take back Winterfell when faced with the knowledge that Ramsay Bolton has captured his younger half-brother, Rickon Stark. Now, Jon Snow was always kinda gloomy, but for some reason after he's resurrected, he's almost become declawed. I get that Lyanna Mormont is supposed to be like the more sassy version of Arya from Season 1, but come on. Why does Davos have to step in and speak for Jon Snow? Why can't Jon Snow speak for himself? He's cowering in front of Lyanna Mormont as though their roles are reversed, and he's the child and she's the adult. Plus, she's only got like 50 men. The Battle of the Bastards was a well-shot and well-choreographed battle sequence. Jon Snow's actions at the beginning of the battle are idiotic. The fact that he and Sansa were just talking about how Ramsay would use psychological tactics in order to lure them into making the wrong decision makes Jon Snow's choice even more foolish. Jon Snow leads all of those men into a trap, and many die because of his really inept decision. Jon Snow was always quite level-headed before this moment. I don't get how post-resurrection depression could be responsible for Jon Snow's decision to charge the Bolton forces after Rickon was shot down. Yeah, it was a dramatic moment, but I tend to be on the side of we should avoid dramatic moments if they happen at the expense of, things making sense and characters behaving in reasonable ways that actually reflect the reality of the situation. Jon Snow almost cost them the entire battle here. He loses major cool points in this moment. But it doesn't stop there. In fact, it gets way worse in Season 7. We all know that Season 7, Episode 6, Beyond the Wall, is probably the worst episode in the history of the show. Jon Snow is part of the reason that this is true. First of all, the entire concept of going beyond the wall to capture a white is laughable, and in contradiction to book canon. If anybody cares, am I the only one? They all should have died up there, honestly. And you can't call Daenerys a Mary Sue and say that Jon Snow isn't one. This guy is always almost dying, but miraculously surviving somehow. The Beyond the Wall episode has the most ridiculous example of this. Jon Snow wouldn't get on the dragon for no reason. Just get on the dragon. It's right there. They could have all escaped. It would have been the perfect getaway if he had just gotten on the fucking dragon. No. Instead, the showrunners want to go out of their way to show the audience how much of a hero Jon Snow is. He's got to keep getting further and further away from the dragon to fight more and more whites, eventually forcing them to leave him after he falls into the frozen lake. Okay, so it's basically winter at this point. That water has got to be near freezing. This is the far north. It would be chilly even in the summer. So it's pretty unclear to me how Jon Snow even survived this. And don't forget, the others, by just being in near proximity to him, make things much colder. So yeah, it's pretty unclear to me how exactly Jon Snow even survived this. Him surviving a few arrows is reasonable. This isn't. Beric being brought back from the dead doesn't make him any more resistant to dying again, so there's no reason to assume that it would do this for Jon. At this point, suspension of disbelief becomes impossible for me. No one could have survived this. Moving on from that, one of the dumbest things that Jon Snow does in this episode, in my opinion, is bend the knee to Daenerys. It simply made no sense. Daenerys has seen the army of the dead and plans to help. Why risk upsetting the Northerners by bending the knee to the daughter of the man who murdered Rickard and Brandon Stark? It would have made a lot more sense to withhold bending the knee indefinitely. Sometimes it feels like Jon Snow is going out of his way to upset the Northern Lords. Like earlier in the season, he refuses to strip the Umbers and the Karstarks of their titles and lands after they supported the Boltons. It's no wonder that the Northern Lords eventually begin to prefer Sansa over Jon. If I'm being truthful, I think the showrunners are purposely having Jon make bad decisions in order to give more shine to characters like Sansa and Dany. It's in line with the current neo-feminist trend of the show and a lot of modern media. Another one of Jon Snow's awful decisions happens in episode 7 when he refused to tell Cersei that he would not pick sides. For some reason, Jon Snow just wants to cause problems. Any reasonable person would have agreed to Cersei's proposal. Instead, Jon Snow would rather anger her. Did he learn nothing from dying? Did he learn nothing from Ned Stark dying? Maybe Jon Snow is not that great of a leader after all. I mean, he was mutinied by the Night's Watch, and as soon as he leaves Winterfell, the Northern Lords want to replace him with his little sister. What's going on here? If Jon Snow is meant to lead humanity out of the darkness, shouldn't he inspire a little bit more loyalty? Jon Snow has somehow been failing upwards for the past few seasons. He would have died at the Battle of the Bastards if not for Sansa, that's a fact. He would have died beyond the wall if not for Benjen randomly showing up and then killing himself for no reason. Jon Snow went from a gloomy kid with a lot of potential to the king of meh. The good news is, unlike a lot of characters, Jon Snow isn't completely broken. I could still see him having a lot of great moments in Season 8. Hopefully, he's less stupid. But then again, what do I know? I'm just some asshole complaining on the internet. Thanks for watching, guys.